Hey guys, Tom Abish here, and this is my week 6 discussion board. I interviewed a former professor of mine from undergrad, and I kind of gave some notes here of what he told me when asked the two questions for the prompt. How do we approach balancing breadth and depth when synthesizing data? Well, he said they need to complement each other and not kind of battle for which one is more relevant, meaning that they need to work together rather than kind of versus each other. And then you got to really know, in order to figure this out, you've got to know which method really drives the research question. So if you're a quantitative based study, for example, like your performance based study, then your quantitative aspect is going to drive that entire research question. So you're trying to figure out, you got to give basically kind of give credit where it's due. If quantitative is the aspect that's driving it, then let it drive it, but make sure that when you put in your qualitative aspect, that it purely complements and is still considered even in your research questions, but not battling for relevancy among the quantitative and qualitative tension. And then analysis, basically be honest about it. So don't try to make it look like the qualitative aspect truly complemented it or agrees with it just because it would make the research seem more relevant, but to be honest about even where they're different from each other, where they maybe disagree, in addition to where they're similar, or the connection between the two. Second question is, what strategies do they recommend for ensuring qualitative and quantitative findings complement each other? Well, keep both methods in mind when you're creating the methodology. That was kind of the major gist, was don't just write it for one and then add the other in. Make sure that when you're creating it, that you're starting off with the mixed methods rather than starting with a quantitative study and then adding the qualitative later. So keep them in mind from the beginning. It probably makes everything a little bit easier. Everything flows and connects better. Also, I guess this kind of feeds right off of it, is connect the quantitative and qualitative as often as possible throughout the entire study, so that one so they're pretty much relevant throughout the entire duration of the study, or at least one has the other in mind as it's proceeding. And then make sure both methods are relevant. So make sure that both methods, it's not like a weak quantitative versus a strong qualitative. Make sure that they're both pretty relevant and valid, and carry significant power. And then be honest if the methods agree. I think that was kind of the major thing, was like, don't just force a qualitative, don't just force a quantitative. Make sure that they're agreeing, and if they disagree, then it's all right to not include one or the other, and to make sure that that you mention whenever they disagree. It's all right. It's not a big deal. How should researchers handle tension and breadth between depth? Well, it seems to me like they probably got to have a natural fit in order for it to really work. I think the strategies that I think are most important to ensure riches of the study is probably to keep both methods in mind when creating the study, making sure that the qualitative and quantitative are working together throughout the entire study, or at least have them in mind as you're creating the structure, the methodology. And then, so for example, in a kine study, right, as I'm doing my second assignment, trying to find MMR in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning is harder than imagined. And I think that mixed methods, to use it, it's got to be specific. It's got to be something that is performance based, that but has a psychological aspect to it. Probably something like a real life example, like a real life, or something observational or game, like let's say something in gameplay or in competition, something of that nature, where there are a lot of outside qualitative aspects to it, rather than like a controlled environment, where you're trying to minimize all these confounding factors, right? Like, it's hard to to run MMR when you're running something of that nature. That's just kind of what I've been picking up over the course of this class. But thanks for listening. I appreciate it, and I'll can't wait to read your feedback. Bye.